Hey there, it's Gary Parrish. Welcome back. CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button like you're Brandon Davies. You have consent, and don't forget while you're here, also go ahead and subscribe to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel if you haven't already done it. Let's get into it. What we got last night, Tuesday night, is another night of chaos in the sport. I want to start in Atlanta. Final score, Georgia Tech, 74, North Carolina, 73. And I don't want to start there because I think that's the biggest story from Tuesday night, because I actually think South Carolina winning at Tennessee was the biggest story from Tuesday night. We're going to get to that. But the reason I want to start with Georgia Tech over North Carolina is because it's the latest example of a top 10 team losing on the road to an unranked team this season, which leads us to Norlander's court report. Deadleg, you used part of your court report this week to detail how unusually often top 10 teams are losing on the road to unranked teams this season. Could you be so kind as to walk us through what you discovered, like a modern day Ferdinand Magellan?
Yeah, I'm not quite Magellan. No, and I'm not going to take. We had noticed this was happening, so it was something that was kind of floating around my head. But then it was clarified last week. Brandon Ramsey, who writes for Kentucky Sports Radio, put out something which had some very interesting data about just how unusually bad top 10 teams were. Again, this is, as I wrote in the court report, this is a very specific corner of college hoops. It was top 10 teams at the time of being ranked top 10, losing on the road against unranked opponents. So that unranked opponent could be the 26th or 28th or 30th best team, but it's not ranked at the time. And what Brandon Ramsey discovered was that this year compared to the past few years was markedly down. Well, then Andrew Weatherman, who's a former Duke men's basketball manager and has done a lot of good stuff sharing data on social media, particularly this season, he went back and scraped all of the information from Sports Reference from 1950, which is as far back as you can go, until now, to determine just how unusual this is. And so, yeah, this is kind of fascinating. Now, and we're going to get to the specific numbers in just one second here. I wonder if we're going to eventually bump back up close to what the record low is. But we do have a weird pattern that has been established, and only in the past 5 days has actually been better for the top 10 teams. We had Duke didn't lose on the road Monday against Virginia Tech. Houston didn't lose on the road Monday against Texas, which is unranked, and we had even more examples of that obviously last night. Ironically enough, as we'll get there, Tennessee, a top 10 team, lost at home to South Carolina. That doesn't apply in this situation. Tennessee was in its own building. So what Weatherman uncovered was, in an average season from 1950 until last season, if you were a top 10 team and you played on the road against an unranked opponent, you won 73.3% of the time. All right, that's a pretty good clip. Almost 3 out of 4 times, you're doing pretty good, but you're a top 10 team. It makes sense. The lowest ever was 2015, 2016. That's the lowest one ever, and that was a 62% hit rate. Still pretty good overall. Until the past few days, it was less than 40% this season. Now it's gotten above 40. GP's got the actual number, updated data after Tuesday night. I included this in court report because I just find it fascinating as hell. And I do think, although the tournament obviously is played on neutral courts, this is such a low number. And I wonder if we'll eventually get to 50%. I think we will. I'll say at the end of the season, someone check back with us. I bet you we're I'll say 52, 53%, which would still be a record comfortably a record. But I almost think this might lead to the situation where we've got maybe not a 16/1 GP, but multiple 1s, 2s, and 3s, 4 or 5 of them, not even making the Sweet 16, which we get every so often. But this just reinforces that to me. Reasons for it, I think, are many. But what were your thoughts on what we've seen here and why this might be the case?
Well, first, you're right. We had sort of talked about this. God, man, it seems like top 10 teams are losing on the road to unranked teams all the time. But we never put pen to paper or got the numbers. So shouts to Brandon Ramsey and everybody else who dove into this. And we'll leave Brandon Ramsey in charge of this going forward. Just keep us updated. And we'll just every once in a while, just send the tweet out and we'll find it and we'll have the numbers. So I'm glad you decided to I'm glad they dove into it. And then, frankly, I might not have even seen it unless you put a big spotlight on it
That's what the court report is for. Absolutely.
That's what the court report is for. Sometimes people ask me, GP, what's the court report for? And I say, What do I say? Tell me again.
You tell me.
Light on things that people otherwise might not know.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's what the court report's for, dummy. So I read the court report. I go, okay, well, this sounds like and then I see North Carolina lose in the final 10 seconds. And by the way, I know Nada's got that highlight. Nathan George in the final 10 seconds. You want to watch a layup with almost no resistance decide a basketball game? Let's do it together.
Let's see it.
If you got they caught in this high pick and roll. Now the shot clock at 5. George drives, goes in, scores! Tech's on top, 7.7. Hubert Davis wants a timeout, 4.6 to go. How about the freshman from Toronto, Nathan George? The kid has ice in his veins, RD.
That's a lot of bounces just to get to the rim.
It was. Now, Baycott got an arm up, and credit to a freshman for getting that done, Nathan George, with a huge shot there. But top 10 team on the road, another one bites the dust.
So when I watched that, I'm like, all right, this is I know how we start now. I couldn't get into the podcast prep document fast enough to let you know how we're going to open the Eye on College Basketball podcast. So then I go to Brandon Ramsey's original tweet from last Friday morning, and I just start updating the numbers. Brandon had it last Friday morning, 17-27. That was the record. Top 10 teams on the road against unranked opponents. We didn't have any such games on Friday night. Go to Saturday. Number 3, North Carolina won at Florida State. Number 5, Tennessee won at Vandy. Number 6, Kentucky won at Arkansas. Number 8, Auburn lost at Mississippi State. Number 9, Arizona wins at Oregon. That's 4-1 for top 10 teams on the road against unranked teams on Saturday. Congrats to them. Sunday, number 2, Purdue wins at Rutgers. That's 1-0. Monday, number 4, Houston wins at Texas. Duke at Virginia Tech. We've detailed that. 2-0 on Monday. Tuesday, number 3, North Carolina loses at Georgia Tech. Number 9, Marquette wins at Villanova. That's 1-1. Add it up. AP top 10 teams are now 25-29 on the road against unranked opponents this season. That's 46.3% winning percentage. It's 27 percentage points lower than the historical average. It is still 15.7 percentage points lower than the all-time worst 2015-2016, 62%.
Yeah, how about that? We'll see if this winds up continuing to trend up for these top 10 teams. I think that it will slightly, but I don't think it's gonna eclipse that all-time low number from just 8 seasons ago. I did have a couple of theories because
I on a very surface level,
yeah,
I tried to dive into it and let me look at this and let me look at this and let me look at this. Nothing just jumps out. Sometimes when you start looking for data points, it just pops out at you in a very surface level. What's the best explanation for this? I didn't see anything that just jumped off the page.
I don't have a full-on A, B, C, D, E, F, G explanation for you, but I do think there are a few things that are at play here. I do think that still being now, even though this wasn't the case the past 2 seasons, I understand that still having a bonus COVID year, I think probably has some sort of tangible impact where teams on average are as old as they've ever been because you have so many guys that are 22, 23, 24 years old still playing college basketball. I got to figure that plays a part. I also think when you've got the Big 12, which has 11 teams that are trying to stay in that NCAA tournament conversation. The Big 12 is the best league in the country. You're not going to have 11 teams ranked. You're not going to have 9 teams ranked. You're not going to have 7 teams ranked. So you're going to have a lot of these good teams going on the road playing a top 30 team per the metrics, but they're not a top 25 team per the poll, and you might take some losses there. I think that also plays an impact as well. And I think because the top of the sport, and we have mentioned this before, I think because the top of the sport is not as reliable 1 through 13, 14, 15, whatever you want to say, like it's good. I'm not going to say there's no great teams. Trust me. We still got plenty of time to get there. And hell, we might already see a couple of them right now. 3 of them, in fact, Houston, UConn, and Purdue. But on balance, your 5th best team, your 8th best team, your 12th best team just might be a notch below what we've seen. So that, maybe that adds up to, that team lost, Carolina, top 5 team right now. It's a good team. It's top 5 team in the poll. But if it was a top 5 team in an average year, does it lose at sub 500 Georgia Tech team? That kind of stuff. So that might have some little bit in the aggregate as well. There are probably other factors. And And one more was, and Torvik actually tweeted this out recently, and I've seen a few. I think Pomeroy might have mentioned it as well. We are pacing toward the most efficient offensive season in the modern era, which means the most efficient offensive season ever because of the 3-point shot. There's no chance that there was, even though we don't have the data for it, that 1977-78 was a more efficient season because there wasn't a 3-point shot, and teams didn't shoot nearly as well if you look back historically there. So because of that, across the board, GP having better offenses. Now it plays both ways. Can impact a top 10 team same way it might benefit a team that's 60, 70, 80 overall. But maybe there's something in that tide that is affecting that overall. So those are just a few thoughts as to why we are where we are. But nonetheless, we are here, and top 10 teams are getting sniped at a level and rate we have never seen before.
I think where you started is probably the most likely explanation for this, because we've had these stretches where, like Houston, which is number one in most computers, they lost, I think, 2 straight road games to unranked opponents when they were in the top 10. But if you go look at it now, those 2 opponents are both ranked. Mm-hmm. And Iowa State is in the top 10. So the dynamics of those matchups have changed subsequently. Where you started was, are these top 10 teams going on the road? And maybe, playing unranked teams, but buddy, these are good teams. They might not be in the top 25 AP poll, but they're top 30 in the computers, top 40 in the computer. I think we've seen maybe more of that than we normally have. And I'd be curious to, and this seems like the type of thing that would be very difficult to research, and in some cases impossible, because you mentioned the database goes all the way back to 1950. I don't think we're going to have access to point spreads all the way back to 1950 or 60 or even 70 or wherever. But I wonder what you would find if you could really dive into it and look at, what do I have the numbers at right now? 25 and 29. So there's been 39, 49, 54 such games this season. There's been 54 times this season where a top 10 AP team has gone on the road and played a team that's unranked in the AP poll. What are the point spreads in those games? Are they smaller than normal? Yeah. Is the gap between these two teams, the top 10 teams and the unranked teams, broadly speaking, is the gap between them smaller than it normally is? I bet you would find out it is.
Quick thought on the game. Good one for Georgia Tech. RJ Davis was the only Carolina player in double figures. We'll focus, we can have a quick thought on Carolina here, but we got
real quick, just because I saw it in the chat. Do we agree? Nice, no call. I don't need a whistle.
I'm not going to listen. Every so often on the show, I am wanting to discuss an officiating issue. This ain't that game. Right. Sorry. Just not that game whatsoever. Don't get yourself caught in a 1-possession game on the road against a sub-500 team. I was fine with the no call there. If you're a Carolina fan, I get it, but whatever. I'm not that concerned about it. And we're going to, trust me, we got UNC chatter to get to on the next show. Kind of a big game waiting this Saturday. It's the first time since 2007 Georgia Tech has defeated Duke and Carolina in the same regular season. Congrats to Damon Stoudemire. This team only 10-11, but has wins over Duke, Carolina, at Clemson, and against Mississippi State. That's just good building blocks for year one. Maybe you wind up playing a spoiler in the ACC tournament. In fact, this is about a minute-long clip or so, but I sent it to Nada because I wanted it. You can hear it, obviously, if you're listening to the pod, but if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for joining. You can see at the start of this, Damon Stoudemire is very emotional, and I just wanted to highlight this because Georgia Tech's not going to the tournament, barring a miracle run, obviously, in the ACC tournament, and it's had a few nice wins that's actually caused it to be relevant in terms of us talking about it and getting a little bit of shine for taking some unexpected victories there. But I always appreciate when we get these peeks into the locker room. And, Damon Stoudemire has been around basketball for a while, but I wouldn't say he's a well-known personality, despite having been a long-time NBA player and all that. And you could see just how much the win meant to him here in that locker room by nature of, you beat Duke and Carolina in the same year. Nada, why don't you fire up this post-game celebration and speech from Damon after last night?
See, nobody sees the way I lean on you guys. I'm hard on you. I really am. I'm hard on you, but I'm hard on you for a reason. And these are tears of joy because I put y'all through. That shit ain't easy, man. I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy. And I know how these games are. They wars. They wars, man. That's how they are. But to get to where we're trying to get, you got to experience. Got to experience it. Okay? Because a lot of them games have went the other way. But you guys stuck together. And that's why we was able to get that win, man. I'm proud of each and every one of y'all. Love y'all. Bring it in. Let's go.
I love it.
Yeah.
You know, Damon's a few years older than me. So my introduction to him is obviously as a college basketball player. I mean, I guess a elite high school prospect is when I first heard of him. And then he goes to college and he's a star. And then I guess the summer after my senior year of high school, he's a top 10 pick in the draft. And I watch his career unfold. Ultimately, he ends up playing for the Grizzlies in Memphis. He ends up as an assistant coach with the Grizzlies in Memphis. Ends up as an assistant coach on Josh Pastner's staff with the Tigers in Memphis. My point is I didn't know Damon at all. And then I got to know him a little bit. And first impressions aren't always everything, but they're often important. I remember meeting him and going, wow, this guy's really impressive. Like I don't even mean to be dismissive of like what stereotypes and stuff, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, as a former NBA player who's trying to get into coaching. It just felt like, man, this guy's sharp, really impressive. And for a long time, I thought he was headed for a long time, I thought he'd either eventually be an NBA head coach or a high major coach at the Division I level. I was just consistently impressed with him. And, you're exactly right. I don't know where Georgia Tech is going this season, but I think when you were trying to establish a culture, trying to, put your stamp on things, it is helpful, even in a not so great year, to have moments like that moment. And they've got a few of them so far this season. And, that Georgia Tech job is historically a tough job. I think tougher than people realize. You think Georgia Tech and Atlanta, and you remember these big moments, Marbury and, they playing in a national championship game against UConn and Paul Hewitt's the coach. You remember these moments, but there hasn't really been a lot of consistent success there. It is historically a tough job, but I'd bet on Damon Stoudemire. I believe in that guy.
Yeah. Final thought, then we'll take a break and move on to the rest of the results here. What he's done so far, and Georgia Tech, I think, had gone 2-8 in its previous 10, something like that, I believe. So there's been a lot of losing, but the wins are certainly uplifting, the ones they've got. And if you told me that we look up in a year and then he's got Georgia Tech top 5 in the ACC, now that seems something that's on the table. Maybe 6 weeks ago, I wouldn't have thought, I don't know about that. Year 2, Georgia Tech. But you're seeing a lot of evidence there. He was a surprise hire when he got the Georgia Tech job. Might just be the perfect hire in the perfect place. You're right. That is a tough job historically. But it's not as tough as another one. And that's South Carolina.
Woo.
Picked up a humongous win, arguably, and I'll explain this after the break, arguably the most valuable win of any team so far this season. We're going to get into that after the break. But first, Nada, can we get a word from our partners?
Out there are two colossal beings, both forces of nature in their own regard. But in here, as soon as the chute bursts open, the duality of man and beast begins to fade. This is the PBR on CBS Sports Network.
All right, Deadleg, handful of interesting results from the past couple of nights. Let's start with Tuesday night in Knoxville. Final score, South Carolina 63, Tennessee 59. The Gamecocks were like 14-point underdogs at tip-off. Tennessee had been beating everybody, for the most part, badly in that building, had beaten Alabama recently by, I believe, 20 points. And South Carolina, I don't even think they went in there and stole one. They just kind of beat them for 40 minutes.
Man, South Carolina, this is the game where not just your NCAA tournament fate is almost sealed. I'm a stickler when it comes to this lock talk. I am, and I've said this on the show in the past. You're not a lock unless you can literally afford to lose every game, no matter how unlikely it is, and still get in. We're not there. But for all intents and purposes, South Carolina, you can stumble plenty of times. You're gonna get in here. This is tremendously valuable. According to the KPI, which only values in-season data, zero predictive element whatsoever. You can check on the highest rated win you have. And the two highest rated wins this season both involve Tennessee. Tennessee's win at Wisconsin, because remember, you get a true road win against a top 5 level, top 10 level kind of team. It's going to carry a lot of value. And then South Carolina actually measures the exact same value. South Carolina at Tennessee. Those are the two best wins on the road per KPI so far. So you've got that. It's like the highest level quad one win you could possibly ask for. Tennessee was 26-5 in its previous 31 games against South Carolina. I mean, this was so one-sided, and understandably so. South Carolina had not won a road game. This got sent around a lot on Tuesday, and rightfully so, because it's been a while. 1997, March 2 of 1997. I didn't realize this till I saw Pat Forty tweet it. It was Kentucky. It was the last home game Pitino ever coached at Kentucky. March 2nd, 97. South Carolina went on the road on a Sunday and beat Kentucky. Forty said Pitino was so pissed off he canceled senior day stuff after the game.
Those are the types of things you only remember because you were there.
Correct. Okay. Exactly. Had no idea. He's canceled the senior day festivities, man. And he never coached another game at Kentucky. That's wild there. March 2nd, 1997, by the way. Yeah, I'm going to do that thing where people go back and say this was happening, that was happening. Shouts to the ladies of the world. The top 10 albums on March 2nd, 1997.
No doubt.
10, Blue by Leanne Rimes. 9, Romeo and Juliet soundtrack. 8, the Evita soundtrack. 7, Celine Dion, Falling Into You. 6, Spice by the Spice Girls. 5, Secrets, Toni Braxton. 4, Pieces of You, Jewel. 3, No Doubt, Tragic Kingdom.
Here we go. I was close.
Close. 2, Erykah Badu, Baduism. And then number 1, Unchained Melody, Leanne Rimes. To the kids out there, before there was Taylor Swift, there was Leanne Rimes, and she was a deal in 1997. No doubt about that.
Did she steal somebody's husband, or somebody steal her husband?
I have no idea.
Somebody's husband got taken.
I can't give you an update. I can't give you an update on that. Number 1 movie at that time, actually, I was a sophomore in high school, and we had one buddy who had a license, and he was supposed to go see. Remember when the Star Wars movies got re-released in the theaters in the 90s? That was like a thing.
Sure.
So Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back was in the theater, and it was a Friday, and our buddy was supposed to take us. And this is before cell phones. He just never showed up, and we had you had to like pre-purchase the tickets to make sure you wanted to get in. There's no cell phones or none of that. So this is the one time where I can say, I walked. Dude, I lived in Vermont. It was snowing. I'll never forget it. We walked from our high school to the movie theater, and we like cut across highways, probably like 4.5 miles to go watch this damn movie. It brought a memory that I forgot that I had when I looked. I was like, what was the number 1 movie the last time South Carolina won on the road against a top 5 team? It was that movie. I'll never forget that.
Remember when somebody could say, hey, I'm on my way to your house, and then they just never show up, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And it was just like, hey, you're going to come over tomorrow, right? And then you would just expect it to probably happen. And then, you could make the phone call. We're not in the carrier pigeon area, but
I know. But I remember one day in high school, I lost my girlfriend for like a whole day. I didn't know where she was for like a whole day, and there was nothing I could do about it.
How long was she your girlfriend after that, by the way? Just get curious.
Probably about 2 more weeks.
Yeah, there might be some facts.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I think I know where she was.
Yeah,
I know where she was. But the point was, it was like she's supposed to be here, but she's not. But I don't what am I supposed to do? Call the police? You can't text her. Like you can't. She's not at home. What are you supposed to do?
That's a tough one.
There was a point in my adult life where if you didn't know where somebody was, there was nothing you could do about it.
You sat there and you took it.
You just sat there.
It really was like there was no. I'm going to text them. It's been 20 minutes. I'm going to text them again or call. None of that. No.
You couldn't follow them on Life 365 or whatever that's called. Nothing. You just had to not know. You just had to not know stuff a lot of the time.
Those were the days, man. Or were they? All right. South Carolina, Talon Cooper, 18 points. BJ Mack had 16. South Carolina had not been a top 5 team period since Devin Downey, of course. It was 2010. Kentucky, the win over Kentucky last week was not a top 10 win. The thing that impressed me here, and credits to Dalton Connect, who continues to be absurd, and he almost saved Tennessee. In fact, him even getting Tennessee to 59 GP was outstanding because Tennessee walked into the game averaging 79 plus per night, held to 59 points on its home floor by South Carolina. Incredible. And credit to Elias Sports for this stat. The last time South Carolina beat two top. This is one hell of a get by Elias. South Carolina, the last time it beat two top 20 teams in a 3-game stretch was against Duke and Carolina in 1968 when they did it in back-to-back games. Yeah, that's right, folks. South Carolina sharing territory with North Carolina and Duke back in the 60s there. It had been that long. Big time up to Lamont Paris. When you have a win like this on a good night, a lot of people watching, media people following along, commenting, talking about it on Inside College Basketball and all that good stuff, talking about it on a podcast. You'll have like, hey, Lamont Paris, like could be the coach of the year. And he is on the top 5 unquestionably. Shaka Smart, although he did not win it at CBS Sports last year, Dusty May did after he made the Final Four. Shaka Smart went from being picked almost last in the Big East to winning the regular season, and he obviously got a ton of run for Coach of the Year. South Carolina picked last in the SEC, and now it's sitting there at 18-3, winning at Tennessee. Only the second time this season a top 5 team has lost lost at home. The other one was trivia time. Other time a team top 5 at the moment lost at home this season. Only one other time.
Top 5 team lost at Michigan State. James Madison, first game of the opening night.
Then it's 2 other times. Okay, yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is here. So it's the 3rd time because it was the first instance since Duke lost at home to Arizona.
There you go.
It lost earlier in that week, so we have 3 instances here. Top 5 teams dropping, but it had been a while. South Carolina got it done on Tuesday.
I got South Carolina up to 15th in the top 25-1. Like at some point, I don't care what your KenPom number is. You know, you're 18-3, 6-2 in the SEC, 4-game winning streak. You're 4-1 in quadrant 1, 3-0 in quadrant 2. So 7 let me make sure I've got it right. I want to get these numbers right. The resume is now it's good. I mean, let me find them here. They are now. Well, this is great.
Do you need me to bring it up?
Well, I had notes, and as I was reading through them, it looked like I had them wrong. 7-2 in the first 2 quadrants.
That's right.
With 1 loss in quadrant 3, 4 quadrant 1 wins. So 5 games above 500 in the first 2 quadrants. I don't love the quadrant 3 loss, but like it is what it is. The 4 quadrant 1 wins, that's the same number as Kansas and North Carolina. It's more than Tennessee, Iowa State. It's more than Illinois. They got a nice resume. The computer numbers are starting to catch up. I've got South Carolina 15th in the top 25-1, and if you want to argue, I should maybe even have them a little higher. I'll listen to that. This is a really nice, surprising season from the second-year coach.
Twice as many Q1 dubs as Kentucky right now. The results-based metrics obviously like South Carolina a lot, as you would think. 18-3 power conference. What they've done so far, predictive's not nearly as in, but they keep it going, and they're going to have really something special there. That's we talked about Georgia Tech and it having a few highs. South Carolina doesn't even have that. This is a program that's made the tournament once since 2004. Coincidentally enough, it was 2017 under Frank Martin. That's the only tournament run in the past 20 years for South Carolina. That year, Final Four was in Glendale, as it will be this year. I don't know if Lamont Paris can pull that off, but some good juju. They're going to get back to the tournament. They are one of the least frequent power conference programs to be in the tournament ever. They're like in the bottom 5 all time for appearances. I don't have it in front of me. I think they've only been in 9 tournaments, maybe. I think that's right. I don't know if they've been tournaments have been played since 39 GP. I think South Carolina's gone 9 times.
No, so, what if you run the research on it? And I know you've done this in various ways over the years, but people like to talk about, what are the toughest power conference jobs? And so, say Penn State in the Big Ten, or Washington State in the Pac-12, or maybe Boston College in the ACC. South Carolina in the SEC is on that list somewhere.
You can make the historic case that it's South Carolina and Vandy at the bottom for toughest. Mississippi's also there. Mississippi State, there's a lot of them. But I was right. It is just 9. They made their first one in 71. The chat rightfully noted. That's also a longtime member of the ACC, founding member of the ACC before it wound up seceding, if you will, and leaving, and ultimately becoming a member of the SEC in the past number of decades there. But yeah, just 9 all-time appearances, and this is going to be 10. They might even take a few. They'll probably take a couple losses here. They're going to be kind of They're going to have more than enough to get it done. I'll also note. in the SEC. South Carolina is 18-3. Mississippi is as well. Won 86-82 in I guess I don't know if the basketball version is called Egg Bowl. I think we actually took care of that with Marquette and Wisconsin.
I think we decided to call Marquette, Wisconsin, the Egg Bowl.
Egg Bowl.
What do we call it? The
Egg Bowl Bedlam. Yeah.
Yeah, Egg Bowl Bedlam.
Yeah,
Egg Bowl Bedlam.
I had a much better name for it. I just can't remember. Well,
no, Egg Bowl Bedlam is.
Yeah, of course.
It should be T-shirts.
Mississippi is also 18-3 at this point. Its metrics aren't as good as South Carolina. It is stacked.
As a Mississippian, can I please? It's Ole Miss.
Say what?
It's Ole Miss.
Yeah, I know. What's the problem?
They don't like it down here when you say Mississippi.
Why?
I never really talked to them about it. I just know that they don't.
Well, you know what? The name of the institution is the University of Mississippi. So
I know, but like
no, don't do this thing where like what's it like? Virginia Tech hates it when you call them Va-Tech. Just live with it, okay?
Horns down to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Horns down to you.
You know what that gets to when the Mississippi people have an issue, then you start getting called Old Piss. So that doesn't work out for you so well.
I will say this: there is nobody who has ever graduated from Mississippi who says I graduated from Mississippi. You say I graduated from Ole Miss or the University of Mississippi. Nobody says I went to Mississippi.
Okay. Well, it's a good one last night by Mississippi.
Mississippi was good last night.
I'll also note. And this isn't a complaint, just merely an observation. I turned in last night, but just before I was getting ready to close up the lapper, I noticed GP finally chimed in on a good night in college hoops. Finally chimed in on the tweet machine.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting stat, a thought on South Carolina's big win. Marquette Nova, which we're going to get to, Carolina, Georgia Tech, any just national college basketball voice, right? No, my guy just he shared a video of an Ole Miss student with a balloon being a long schlong, and that was your commentary for college hoops on the night.
Yeah,
With the hashtag, I think the hashtag was "Come to the Sip."
Come to the Sip.
Okay.
Come to the Sip. We're recruiting to the Sip.
Yeah. Okay.
We got incredible cost of living down here. You'd really enjoy it. You'd enjoy parts of it. You would enjoy the cost of living. That might be it. But you would enjoy that. I don't even know if it's inappropriate or not. I think it's funny when people pretend that something is their ding-a-ling and wave it around. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I think it's funny every time.
Ding-a-ling. Yeah, that's the ding-a-ling. You drop a ding-a-ling.
So what we have is these two fellas, presumably Ole Miss students, and buddy, they look exactly like Ole Miss students. Like if you were casting for Ole Miss students, this is where you're going. And they got their balloons in their.
I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm not saying
I do that sometimes myself, even at this age.
And it's not funny. I'm
just saying, like, have I been to a children's birthday party in the past year and pretended a long balloon was my ding-a-ling? Have I done that in the past year? Probably. Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. I've definitely done that.
Times a year. Chris Beard's former team, by the way. Quick rewind to Monday. Houston 76, Texas 72. Horns down.
Horns down.
Horns down.
Horns down to them. Shouts to Jamal Shedd, proud graduate of Manor High School, 13 miles from the Moody Center. Comes back home, 25 points. Do you see his quotes afterwards? It was good.
No.
They asked him, because it was homecoming. He grew up 13 miles from Texas's campus. So I guess, and now, because of Houston moving to the Big 12, 1 year before Texas moves to the SEC in Jamal Shedd's fourth year he gets this opportunity to go back home and play 13 miles from where he went to high school. And so I guess naturally people are like, so did you, when you were growing up in the Austin area, did you always dream of going to Texas? And he said, no. And do you know? Okay, I'm a trivia time.
Okay.
Jamal Shedd said he never dreamed of going to Texas. Why? Because the follow-up question is, why not? Why not? Why do you think he never dreamed of going to Texas?
I did not see the quote. I will say because Texas is interesting on the football side and the hoop side. In Texas, as Kellen Sampson recently told me, it's got a humongous fan base, obviously, University of Texas, Old Tex, I think they call it there too, by the way. you either are for Old Tex or you hate Texas. So it is Texas against the world when it considers Texas its own world, and frankly, many people do. So I'm going to say he said no because he grew up hating Texas, like maybe he had family that went somewhere else. That's my guess.
Perfectly reasonable guess. You know what he said? And I'm paraphrasing here, but this is what he said. I never dreamed of going to Texas because I never thought I'd be good enough to go to Texas.
All right. Well, there's believe in yourself, young man, and anything is possible.
It's the most like everybody's like, I always believed in myself. And he kind of was like, I really didn't, you know, he said, so, and then they were like, why? Because he committed to Houston, like May, like at the end of his junior year of high school or right at the beginning of his summer before his senior year of high school. So early.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, so why Houston? He said, the first school that showed interest in me is the one that got me. It was just like, it sounds like Houston was just like, man, we like you. And he was like, cool, let's do it. He was ranked 191st in the class of 2020. So in fairness to Texas, Shaka Smart was the coach at the time. They almost never sign players at Texas ranked 191st in the country. It's just not really where they're looking too often. So this isn't one of those where like, what were they doing? He was a little guard ranked 191st in his class. But I thought it was funny that he never dreamed of going to Texas because he didn't think he'd be good enough. And then he comes into Texas as a fourth-year player for the team ranked number 1 in the net and KenPom and everywhere else, and goes and gets 25 in an overtime victory. Horns down.
Yeah, and he is at worst a second-team All-American as we get ready to tip over into February here. Good job by him. Houston gets it done on the road. Texas loses an opportunity at home. Part of why I wrote that thing with the court report, by the way, is I thought, well, maybe Duke, top 10 team, will get picked off of Virginia Tech, which it had done like 5 of the previous 6 meetings, or Houston would get knocked off of Texas. Both top 10 teams, one on the road on Monday. You mentioned Shaka Smart. Let's talk about his current team. 85-80 win at Villanova. They got out to a 20-point first-half lead. It looked ugly early. Credit to Nova. They battled back. They got a 4-point lead midway through the second half. But you know what? Did you see this tweet from Dick Weiss? Did you see this?
Tyler Kolick.
You saw it. Hoops Weiss, a legend.
I mean, there's been a whole bunch of stuff going on in social media over the past couple of days that has had me laughing uncontrollably. I mean, buddy, I've been giggling a lot. I mean, woo! I've been giggling a lot. The group texts have been something else over the past couple of days. But did Hoops take it to another level with that tweet?
Of course.
Did I actually, like, the ratio of how often people LOL relative to how often they say they LOL is like, it's not right. All right. But I'm telling you, that tweet popped up on my computer and I actually LOL. I love Hoops. I love him.
Just a legend.
A legend.
I love this. Just Tyler Kolick. That's all you need to know. But I will explain with a few more words. Tyler Kolick had a career best 32 points, along with 8 boards, a few steals, and Marquette didn't have Cam Jones in the game because of an ankle. They don't have Sean Jones for the rest of the season. Chase Ross did return, which was big there. And Marquette's now peeled off 5 straight wins. And as I said on HQ earlier in the day, I thought this game was actually important for Marquette, which I like. Marquette's not going to be a 1 seed, but the idea that it could get a 2 seed is not, and that's what I had last season. That's not off the table. It's just got to win on the road against quad 1 level teams in the league. And this qualifies, even though Villanova is just spinning in the wind. And we will get to Nova in just 1 second. I thought this was important to Marquette's hopes of getting a 2. It might not get a 2, but it's not out of the question. And to do this, and now peel off 5 in a row. And they're also in this stretch here, Marquette is, where it's playing 6 out of 8 games on the road in Big East play, which is obviously just a huge ask. So they're going to take a loss here relatively soon, you would think, just because that's going to pile up. There's going to be compound impact. But good on them. And then earmuffs here, I guess, because Marquette beat writer Ben Steele also had this great quote from Kolick at the podium. Because
he cusses a lot.
He does cuss a lot. But it's near the end of the game. The game is basically, it was decided. Like, Kolick was at the line to ice it, but Villanova basically had no chance to win. And I don't know how this started, but it's been a thing now. I can't remember how it started. Marquette fans know. I just don't remember. But the Nova student section is chanting, "You can't read! You can't read! You can't read!" And so Kolick said afterward, we come on the road and they're yelling, And again, earmuffs. They're yelling, I can't read. They're yelling, where were you January 6th? All this shit. I love that stuff. Info.
Is Tyler
just incredible, man.
Is Tyler Kolek a Capitol stormer?
I don't think so. I think he was a student at George Mason when January 6th happened. Maybe there's a little bit of
Does he have that reputation? Because there's some people in sports where you're like, oh yeah, I know. I know what he was up to on January 6th. Is Tyler Kolek? Does he have that reputation? You don't know.
I don't believe so. But the fact that he's at the fresh air going, they're yelling, "Where were you January 6th?" All this shit. I love that stuff. Tyler Kolek never changed, man. You are an incredible quote.
We're gonna have to wash his mouth out with soap Sunday, though.
Whatever, man. He's tremendous. And
you ever had your mouth washed out with soap?
I have actually, yes. It's been a minute, but yes, when I was younger, I did. Isn't
it wild? Did your parents actually shove a bar of soap in your mouth?
It wasn't a shove so much as you're going to open your mouth, you're going to put this bar of soap in your mouth for 30 seconds and live with it, and then.
Can you imagine?
I can, dude. I haven't thought about that or thought about the taste of that in forever. And to be honest, I 100% deserved it. And if I deserved it, we know you deserved it. But I'm thinking like 8 years old or so. Will not ask my children to wash their mouths out with soap.
Yeah, my kids could sure use it. I tell you, you start playing Fortnite, you're gonna start talking like Tyler Kolek before long every once in a while. All right. But I can't envision me putting a bar of soap in my kid's mouth, although I do think it would be funny. The problem is they would probably think it's funny. They probably think it's hilarious. Like, what are you trying to put a bar of soap in my mouth, weirdo? And then they call me bald. Then they'd say I look like a penis.
Yeah, well, yeah, parenting, you're excelling for sure. Quick on Nova, and then you can give me your thoughts on the game. 11-10 now, and I said this last night on my late night HQ hit. The only silver lining I can give you, Villanova fans, is that. And it's not even the resume point. Like, you're going to have to win a lot of games. The losses are piling up. You've played a lot of quad one games. I get all that. And you have some high end wins, but there's too many losses. Like, you're not near the tournament conversation right now. Because of who's on the roster, like, it's not unthinkable that we get to the Big East tournament, and whether you're the 5 seed or the 6 or the 7 or the 8, wherever you are, that we look up on that Saturday championship night and Villanova's playing for the auto bid. Like, I still think that kind of stuff is on the table, and maybe they get it together in February. Like, they're still good enough. They have the roster. I think a lot of the frustration with Villanova fans is like, come on, man. Like, maybe we're not going to be able to continue being like a top 3 team in the Big East right now this season, which is another issue altogether we've talked about before. Villanova fans, their program was running the Big East, okay? Running the Big East, operating as a top 5 program in the sport, and now it's gone from that to in a year and a half, it's just dropped so precipitously that it's like, we can't have this. We can't have a situation where we were the bully of the league, and even if we allow some air and space for Marquette and UConn to sit at the table with us, we need to be at the table. Villanova's not at the table now. They've completely dropped off. But I still think you've got the roster. In fact, the only good news for Villanova last night, they could have used these guys. The only good thing about Villanova that happened on Tuesday night in basketball was these 3 fellas right here popping up on the screen. Not us bringing it up. I thought this was going to be so beautiful. Those guys. Oh, the Knicks on Tuesday. Brunson went for 29 and 8. Josh Hart had a triple-double, 10s across the board, 10, 10, 10. DiVincenzo set a personal career best with 9 threes made and went for 33 points. Those dudes all play for the Knicks. It was actually, for Nova fans who are aware of this, if you're a general college hoops fan, you might not have been clued into what the Knicks were doing. This was really like, this right here that you see on the screen, that was like come on, man. We just dropped and had to have it home game against Marquette. And then all these dudes that won these titles with us, they're all playing together on the same team, and they go for these huge nights. It's a moment of pride, but a moment of real pain for Villanova fans. Your thoughts on what went down at the Finn?
Well, on one hand, like, they got back in it and had a chance, but they were down 11-0 again. Weren't they just down 11-0 to UConn?
Yeah, that is part of it. You get behind, and they did get the lead, but it's almost like they exerted so much getting back into it. And Marquette was just like, "No, we got the gas to close this out."
And it's not like they're incapable of beating good teams. They've got good wins. That's why I like you wouldn't rule out them making a run in the Big East tournament. Although I certainly will not predict it, but I wouldn't rule it out just because I've seen them play well and win. It's not that they can't beat good teams. It's that they can't consistently beat the teams they're supposed to beat. They're 5-7 in the first 2 quadrants, but they got 3 losses in quadrant 3. That's yucky.
It's more than yucky at this.
49th in the net, and wildly disappointing for the 2nd straight season. And Yeah, I said it last week on Inside College Basketball when I guess St. John's beat Villanova. And one of the points I made is that I'm not surprised that St. John's is good under Rick Pitino. I always assumed whoever hired Rick Pitino would be good very quickly. What I am surprised is that Villanova has gone from one of the most consistently great, successful programs in the sport to something that has been wildly disappointing now 2 straight years. And, we don't have to get into it, but there's one obvious thing that happened in between these things happening. And that's why some Villanova fans are concerned right now.
Yeah, 5 straight losses for Nova. Lost 6 of the past 7. The only win is at home against DePaul. That's how tough it is. Nova will play at home against Providence on Sunday. Let's quickly tour around the rest of the whip round because we still got one more break before we got to wrap the show. Another team that had a got to have it win that lost at home on Tuesday was Ohio State. Mm-hmm. Chris Holtman's team drops another game. Illinois goes in, gets 23 from Marcus Damask, who now has 6 games of 20 or more points. He's actually developed into quite the reliable player, man. And Terrence Shannon Jr. also had 23 in that one. Illinois goes and gets another quality win, continues to build a really good resume. But Ohio State losing here and really slipping from once being a 12-2 team. And this happened last year. I mean, Ohio State started 10-3 and it finished the season 16-19. This year started 12-2, has now lost 6 of its past 7, just like Villanova, with the one win, just like Villanova at home against complete afterthought of a team in Penn State here. Buckeyes, it is spiraled. They got to play at Iowa on Friday there. And Holtman job security, obviously, it's in question now. They're going to switch ADs here coming up. Ross Bjork takes over from Texas A&M for a long time. AD at Ohio State, Gene Smith, who is retiring there. So, yeah, GP, that was a Peacock game. Don't know if you're able to, if you tuned in.
Yeah, no, I had it on. And it was close in the first half, like back and forth, but then Illinois took control and pulled away, and Ohio State didn't really threaten down the stretch in any sort of meaningful way. Illinois got, they have 3 really good players at the top of their roster, and, that's a legitimate Final Four contender. With Ohio State, it just feels like something's off there, right? It just doesn't feel right. I know that's a pretty broad, vague thing to say. It just, something's off.
Holtman has lost grasp of whatever he had. It's just not there. And some of it is like some unlucky shooting, without a doubt. Like, they've got some weirdly bad shooting performances that just isn't coaching related. It's just some bad breaks there. But I agree with you. And I don't know what it is. I don't even know if that staff can fully understand what it is. But it shouldn't be like this. And I understand the Ohio State fans are they are fed up at this point, and now that team will need to rally and reverse this if it wants to get in the tournament. And now it needs to win 6 of its next 7. Seems like a little bit of a tall task there. Couple get right outcomes. St. Bonaventure was down 20 in the first half, and Nova could not overcome a 20-point deficit to win. Bonaventure did on Tuesday, beat VCU 67-62. That's of note because that sets up a huge game, which won't be in the Final Four one, but we'll talk about it on Friday. Bonnie's at Dayton. Big time A-10 game on Friday. That was a big win for Bonaventure in the A-10. VCU had the longest road streak in the country, had won in 11 straight. Actually, VCU and UNC. UNC had won 7 in a row. Those were the 2 longest road winning streaks in the country going into Tuesday night. They both went down. Will Wade and McNeese State. And stand up, Central Connecticut State University. They've both won 6 in a row. Big ups to the Connecticut State University education system. Oklahoma, get right game, 73-53 over Kansas State. K-State's lost 3 straight games.
That's tough. Those are like Kansas State. They did enough in the non-league. Yeah, they're the ones that got to finish around 500 in the Big 12, and they'll probably be okay. And you got to win. Those are the types of games, like the coin flip type of games at home. You got to get those, and they got blown out.
1-5 against ranked teams this season so far for Kansas State. We've talked about, there are 11 teams moving toward trying to get into the tournament for the Big 12. I don't think there's going to be 11. I think 10's possible. 9 is a lock. One of those teams that could be boxed out, though, it might be K-State. They got to start getting some big wins. Colorado State also got right last night, GP. That game was on our air. CBS Sports Network had lost 4 of his previous 6, all of them on the road. CSU is 11-1 at home. It beat San Diego State 79-71. Isaiah Stevens was tremendous, and Nick Clifford was also very, very good. Those are 2 best players. CSU had 11 steals, and they needed that one. They finally got it, and good on them. And then last result here, Tom Izzo, congrats on your 700th win. Not only win number 700, but did it against your rival, as expected, Michigan non-competitive, 81-62. Izzo has hit 700 W's, and I believe he is one of 9 active coaches to reach that mark.
And we've made a point to point out some of the unusual stuff that's happened within Michigan's program or with Juwan Howard over the years, including the season. I did note that I saw his quote last night about Tom, and Michigan and Michigan State are bitter rivals, and I really like it when the people who lead these programs can be civil, even complimentary of each other, because they can't always be that. But I like it when they are. And I thought it was nice that Juwan last night said, hey, listen, rivalry aside, I got a lot of respect for Tom Izzo. He's one of the all-time greats. And, he's somebody, I'm paraphrasing here, but he's somebody we all aspire to be more like and look up to. And I thought it was nice that he said nice things in that moment. Juwan's having a tough season. Michigan's having a tough season. I like that he could set that aside and say something nice about a guy who is one of the all-time greats in the sport.
Another all-time great in the sport is John Calipari at Kentucky. I led my court report this week with a note on Kentucky and its defense. And with UK getting ready to play another game here, we figured we'd dive into that. So Nada, before we do that, I believe we are owed one more word from those partners.
The biggest event in sports is coming to the entertainment capital of the world. CBS Sports HQ will have you covered every minute, getting you set with all the critical analysis you need. Ready, set, Vegas.
Norlander, like you said, you led this week's court report on Kentucky, and it's not good defense. That suggests the Wildcats likely won't win a national title unless they improve on that end. Tell me what you learned.
All right, so
Ferdinand Magellan.
That's right.
I like Ferdinand Magellan.
I like DeSoto.
Oh man, you don't know nothing about DeSoto. You don't even know where I'm at right now. You know where I'm at right now?
Mississippi.
DeSoto County, Mississippi.
Ole Miss.
DeSoto County, Mississippi.
Are you really? There you go.
I'm in Hernando, DeSoto. I'm in Hernando.
Yeah.
The city in DeSoto County.
That was a Seinfeld reference that flew over your head, but that's good.
I don't watch Seinfeld.
I know.
I don't quote it. Don't watch it. Don't quote it. Can't wait for Curb though. Final season starts Sunday.
Curb on Sunday. Cannot wait. I drop a Seinfeld reference on you about once every 6 shows. I just very, very rarely mention that I'm actually doing it. I figured I'd give you a little heads up there. Jerry and George at the diner, and Jerry likes Magellan, and then he asked George, "Who do you like?" He's like, "I like DeSoto."
Okay, no. But I hope people don't think I was trying to quote Seinfeld, because I wasn't. I had no idea. I just really like Ferdinand Magellan. I enjoy his work.
You circled back to Magellan, and I figured I had to invoke it there. Let's talk Kentucky.
Okay.
So the defense has been an issue, and then I thought, you know what? All right, once and for all, let's see where this stands up. So I reached out to a guy, perhaps you've heard of him, Kenneth Pomeroy. And I said,
I know.
Right. I was like, listen, I can do the research here, but if you have a way of quickly pulling it up and saving me, 2 hours, I'll be forever grateful to you. And he's like, I got you, Norlander, no problem whatsoever. Because the key here is not to look at KenPom numbers once tournament play has started. No. That is infecting the pool.
I know, but it's so much easier to do.
No, but if you make the Final Four, you have inflated your numbers.
I know, but you know how much time you save by doing it that way.
Well, this is the accurate way of doing it.
I know it's the right way, but it's so much harder.
That's why that's what the court report's there for. People ask me.
That's what I tell people when they ask me.
The right way. Okay.
That's what I tell people when they ask me. Sometimes people on the streets, they'll just be like, GP, what's the court report for? And I'll say, it is to shine a light on things you might otherwise not know, and to do things the hard way, but the right way.
The right. Well, this wasn't the hard way. Ken Pomeroy did the research for me. The right way.
Okay, good.
So thank you to Ken. He is credited in the piece. Appreciate you, bud, so much for that. So you want to do this the right way. You look at where teams are ranked after Selection Sunday before a tournament game has been played. And so KenPom's data now goes back to the 1996-1997 season. And the highest, or I should say the lowest ranked team in defensive efficiency since then to win a national title. So where you were ranked heading into the tournament was Baylor in 2020-21, and that was even the COVID bubble year. Only a few teams have been.
Didn't it feel like they were awesome by the end?
Well, it was because they had maybe the best defensive player in the country. Yes, right. For sure. In fact, I'll tell you right now, but they did jump it. So they were 44th. Baylor was going into the 21 tournament in defensive efficiency. They had a really good offense. They finished 22nd, so they jumped up and halved their standing by the end. Again, 6 wins. It's going to make you look better than you were heading into the tournament. But for the most part, you got to be for the most part, you got to be a top 30 defense. The teams that have done it, that have not been a top 30 defense, Baylor in 21, Duke in 2015, but it had the 6th ranked offense. Carolina, this one was stunning to me. 09 Carolina was 37th in defense, but it was 3rd in offense. Even like your UConns in 11 and 14, like UConn in 14 was a good defensive team. It wasn't that good on offense. In 11, it was 27th on defense, but it was 15 on offense. And then Syracuse, a 3 seed in 03, was 31st. Those are the only teams. For the most part, you got to be top 25. Obviously,
or you got to have Carmelo or somebody like that.
Right, exactly. And so many of these teams were ranked top 10 in defensive efficiency. And if you weren't, you had a pretty good offense. Now, Kentucky does have a good offense. So the point of leading the court report with this was just that it's not that Kentucky can't win a national title. History suggests that it will not if it doesn't drastically change its defense. Now, Kentucky's going to host Florida here on Wednesday night, so this leads into Kentucky bringing the Gators in, and hopefully they can have another good defensive effort because they're actually now, because, you know, the way that Pomeroy's algorithm works as it should, Kentucky's 75th right now. It was 70th on Tuesday, but because of whatever happened else around the world, they are now 75th in defensive efficiency. Now, Kentucky was 96th before the Arkansas game, but the defense was its 2nd best defensive performance of the season. They won 63-57 on the road, held Arkansas to 57 points. It jumped them, but they need to put together streaks of games where they're holding teams under a point per possession. They need to do that. Otherwise, they're not going to win 6. And, you know, if they don't win the national title, it's not the worst thing in the world, but we see this team that's deep, so talented, so much fun, so much potential. We think, well, yeah, man, that's a national title contender. I'm just telling you right now, it's not. It does not have the defense. It's not close to suggest it can win a national title. But as I put at the end of it, if you simply would just be like, if you're a Kentucky fan, you're like, you know what, I want to just get us back to a Final Four. It's been 9 years. Then you've got hope because many teams, and not, you know, a handful, not many, have reached the Final Four. And as GP and I say often on the show, winning 4, winning 6. That's a huge gap in the tournament. You can win 4 with a mediocre defense. The 5 worst to do it all had worse defenses than Kentucky has right now. Marquette in 03, Dwayne Wade, Tom Crean, they were 80th going into the tournament in defensive efficiency. 21 UCLA, another COVID year, they were 86 when they went from first 4 to Final 4. 2000 Carolina, which was an 8 seed, was 100th in defensive efficiency the day after Selection Sunday. VCU, 126, really has the worst statistical profile of any team to make a Final Four. And then last year's Miami team, you down, 132nd in defensive efficiency. Last year's Miami team was the worst defensive team in the Ken Pom era since 97 to make a Final Four. So Kentucky can get there. Kentucky can get to Arizona with the defense it has currently, but it will not win 6 games if it doesn't significantly upgrade itself on that end of the floor.
Because the problem, and I don't remember who, like, somebody said this one time, and it just sort of, it's the simplest way to illustrate the point you're making. Like, you can get to a Final Four with a subpar defense or a subpar offense or a subpar team, but the reason we don't see those Cinderella Final Four teams or those unusual Final Four teams go on and win the national championship almost ever is because once you get there, you still got to win 2 games against teams that are better than you. And that's very, very difficult to do. Like, you get there and you're like, we're here. All right. Can you win 2 more games you're not supposed to win against 2 of the best teams in the country? Because that's what you have to do now. And with that kind of defense, well, then that's where it usually catches up with you.
And what do those 5 teams I just mentioned have in common? The ones with the subpar defenses that nonetheless made the Final Four: 03 Marquette, 21 UCLA, 2000 Carolina, 2011 VCU, 2023 Miami. What do they all have in common? None of them won once they got to the Final Four. They only won 4 games.
They often get blown out.
Yeah, and they get run. So Kentucky might well do it. I don't want to say it can't, but I think it is asking a lot for a team that is just pedestrian on defense to rally in the second half of the season. And I mean, if you want the target, like, you know, top 45. Baylor was 44, and it played in a weird circumstance in a bubble, and it won. Right. Other than that, it's been a few teams that are hovering around 40. But you want to, maybe, because of the talent, you know, coaches won it there before. Can you get in that top 45 conversation? If not, It just won't happen. I think there is correlation there. I really do. Like at a certain point, like you need to be able to prove that you can play high level defense. And Kentucky's a ton of fun. But we just got to see it. It did it against Arkansas on the road. Now it hosts Florida. Let's see. Can they put back to back together? Games of really, really good defense. That's going to be the key for UK once we get to March.
I do think that Baylor team is interesting because I think the circumstances matter. They weren't good defensively, but they were in a bubble. That was unusual. Yep. I don't know that it mattered, but like it's a variable that is different.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
They had maybe the greatest perimeter defender in the country. All right. So even though they weren't great defensively, they had a great defensive player. And in the title game, they played somebody that they athletically overwhelmed.
Yes. Correct. Yeah.
And so I think all of that stuff allowed them to win a national championship with a defense that wasn't great throughout the season. Because they had a great defensive player, they were in the bubble, which might have changed the dynamics of the thing. And their opponent in the title game was an opponent they were able to just athletically overwhelm, and that was obvious within the first few minutes of that game. You want to look ahead to the next couple nights?
Lay out the viewing guide for our listeners and viewers for Wednesday and Thursday. What do we got?
And I mean quickly look ahead to the next two nights, if you know what I mean. Wednesday night, that's tonight. Providence is at number 1, UConn. Northwestern is at number 2, Purdue. So the top 2 teams in the AP poll are at home against.
But how many does Purdue win by tonight? Revenge game, lost at Northwestern.
Oh yeah, I thought about this. I would lay it. I'd lay it.
Do we know the line? Let me bring it up real quick. Not for the Final Four one, just out of curiosity. I know we're going to scoot here pretty quick.
This feels like the one where they'll go out and win it by 25.
I'm gonna guess. How about the classic guess the line? No one's ever done that before. Okay. I will blindly say the line is Purdue.
14. I'm gonna say 14 and a half.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Okay.
I was gonna say 14 and a half. Let me bring it up. Purdue is minus 13.
Okay.
I would take Purdue to cover.
Yeah, let's lay that number. Florida is at number 10, Kentucky. Boise State's at number 19, New Mexico. So another late 30. New Mexico is unreal in that building, man. They are crazy good. That's a good game. I mean, we get interesting Mountain West games every midweek and every weekend now.
It's tremendous.
It's a fun league.
I would like for that to be close, but New Mexico has been awesome in that building. But still, nonetheless, one worth watching.
Number 24, Alabama is at Georgia. Wonderful football game. We'll see if it's a interesting basketball game.
I feel like Georgia's got a shot there, but we'll
yeah,
see.
This isn't top 10 team on the road against unranked opponent, but it is top 10 computer team on the road against unranked opponent. And this is exactly like Georgia's not better than Alabama. Alabama is really good. Georgia can beat Alabama tonight in Georgia. That's where we're at.
Okay.
Thursday night, we get number 6, Wisconsin at Nebraska. By the way, I've got Wisconsin up to number 4 in the top 25 and 1 now. Like if I had to put a bracket, Wisconsin would be a number 1 seed.
Ooh, you might be the only one. I peeked in on a few projections. I think Palm's got him at a 2. I'm not saying you're wrong. I think most.
Well, I wouldn't have had him here yesterday. North Carolina would have been my 4th number 1 yesterday.
And
but would
now,
you take it?
Okay.
Now I move Wisconsin ahead of Carolina. I only moved Carolina down to number 5, and I know some fans are going to be really bothered by that. They lost at Georgia Tech, and I don't think anybody outside of the top 5 that has a resume better than North Carolina's. Yeah, North Carolina lost last night. They're still 10-1 in their past 11. 10-1 in their past 11. They lost in the final 10 seconds, and they've got a resume better than everybody other than, I think, Purdue, UConn, Houston, and Wisconsin. But I do have Wisconsin 4, Carolina 5 right now. Wisconsin, I move you into the top 5, and you got to go to Pinnacle Bank?
Shouts to Borzello for this. This is crazy. So I will finally concede that you don't just walk into Pinnacle Bank if Nebraska wins tonight, because right now Nebraska is plus 59 and 5-0 at home. It's minus 72 and 0-5 on the road in Big Ten play. It can't walk into any place that isn't Pinnacle.
I was way ahead of the curve on this. I think I invented this.
It's bolted the doors on Pinnacle Bank there. I will concede if Nebraska pulls this off against Bucky on Thursday.
At what point do I get invited to Nebraska as the person who first recognized that Pinnacle Bank is insurmountable?
I don't have that answer for you.
I'm like the Ferdinand Magellan of discovering the difficulty of winning as a visitor in Pinnacle Bank.
I can't believe you're going to turn your back on DeSoto like this, though. By the way, discover the Mississippi.
I know, but I think if you get into Hernandez, I think if you get into DeSoto's Wikipedia, I think if you get into DeSoto's Wikipedia page, you're gonna find some stuff you're not comfortable with.
Okay. You are more familiar than I heard.
I think you're gonna find some stuff you might not like.
I think I accidentally just called him Ferdinand DeSoto. You went Hernando, but anyway, continue. And you live in Hernando, Mississippi. You got DeSoto written all over you, by the way.
There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff.
Should you even be on this podcast?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't. We're gonna have to release I'm gonna have to release a 40-second video later tonight apologizing.
Let's go.
Oregon at USC. That's Thursday night as well.
Yeah, the USC is it's a tough one.
That's all I got, I think.
Solid next 2 nights. Enjoy it. Friday 9 a.m. Eastern. We will have a loaded show, regardless of what happens here. Wednesday night and Thursday. Saturday, we have the biggest weekend in the sport coming up. That mid-December weekend was huge, and I thought it was going to be the best because of the matchups. This one's even more historic. 4 top 10 teams meeting. It's never happened on a regular season weekend in the history of the sport. We will save all of that chatter for Friday. But until then, if you want to read the court report, we'll link it here in the podcast description. We are now in the last day of January. If you've got buddies, guys and gal pals who like college hoops, but you don't know if they listen to podcasts, please be sure to spread the word. Continue to get us out there. We appreciate you. Fun little Wednesday chat with you, GP, and we'll talk on Friday.
Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry M. Fantigo, legend. Shouts to Huck Larnell, Ferdinand Magellan, and Hernando DeSoto. He did some good things. He did some good things too.
Let's just keep it moving.
If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple and Spotify. There's more of us than there are of them. Ferdinand Magellan, clearly one of us.
Okay, sure.
No doubt in my mind.
All right, no doubt.
No doubt in my mind. That needs to be reflected in the comments. So please do that. We'll talk to you again on Friday morning. Till then,